know we don't need to waste time with this one?
Because
Because they are the son of perdition. How do we know? No, it's in the Bible, ne? It's not me who brought the thinking.
We just read this verse now.
There was supposed to be a lost one. So that scripture might be fulfilled. So we're speaking on the theme that has been given. His method, our mission. We already spoke on how John 17 is an odd placing. You know, in Matthew and Mark and Luke both, basically, when they speak about this, chapter 13 is where they end. Chapter 13 of John, that is, where they are washing the feet and eating the Passover. In that passage, that's where they end, and then they say they then left for the Garden of Gethsemane, for the Mount of Olives. And when they do that, the next step is that they are in the Garden of Gethsemane and Christ saying, stay and pray. But when you read in John, in chapter 13, he institutes the Lord's Supper, and then he starts having conversations with them. I mean, the rest of chapter 13 is just a conversation. Chapter 14, the whole of it, he's still speaking in the upper room. It's only at the end that he says, let's go. Then it becomes very complicated where chapter 15 and 16 and 17 happen. 15 to 17, we don't know where they happen. Where are they when these conversations are happening? Where is this prayer of 17 happening? Because it was only in chapter 18 verse 1 where they then said they entered the Garden of Gethsemane. But perhaps it's no matter to know where they were because the conversation is important. What's important maybe is the content of the chapter. When you look at chapter 17, it is a prayer like we started off. And Christ touches 3 points in that chapter. He starts off by praying for himself. And we were speaking about prayer this morning. The first thing he does is pray on his own behalf. But the beauty is, even as he prays about himself, he is still thinking of the church. Because verses 1 to 5 is when he's speaking about himself. Father, glorify your Son as I have glorified you. But in the middle of that, he pauses to say, this is life eternal that they may know you. He's still thinking about his church. As a leader, it is important that even as you think of yourself, you think of yourself in the context of those. It's a danger when the leader thinks about himself. It becomes a challenge. The second thing is he prays for his current believers. Which is where we find our scripture, our verse of consideration today. When he now prays for their unity, he prays for their going on, he prays for their protection from the world around them. It's important to note that he doesn't pray for their being removed from the world, but he prays that the world might not be contaminated to them. And then finally he prays for the future believers, which is us, you and I. And in all this,
kukho konke lokho
his heart
inhliziyo yakhe
is that one day there might be
ukuthi
unity.
ngelinye ilanga kube nokubambana
Not here on earth, but when he comes
kodwa hayi
again.
lapha emhlabeni kodwa lapho ebuya futhi okwesibili
And so he gets to pray because he completed his work.
ebese yathandaza ngoba seqedile umsebenzi wakhe.
You see, when this is basically the longest prayer recorded in all the Gospels.
Lokhu ke kungumthandazo omkhulu waqoshwayo kuwo wonke amagospel
This is the longest prayer of Christ recorded.
lo umthandazo omude kaKristu owaqoshwayo eBhayibhelini.
And you can hear in the language
Uyezwa futhi nolimi
that
olusetshenziswayo
this is a person who is living.
ukuthi lo ngumuntu ohambayo ovalelisayo.
It's a person who is giving maybe a benediction
Lo
even
ngumuntu ke ovalelisayo
because the work is done.
ngenxa yokuthi umsebenzi ufeziwe uphelelisiwe.
If that's the case,
Uma ke kulile kuyindaba leyo
it becomes very important that we don't read chapter 17 in isolation.
kuyabaluleka futhi ukuthi singafundi ku17 kuphela isahluko sifakwe eceleni.
Because when you extract 17 from the context of
Ngoba
other
uma
chapters,
sikhipha u17 kuwo kula ma chapters zonke
you run a risk of speaking into the text and not letting the text speak to you.
ungagcina usikhuluma ngombhalo ungasavumela umbhalo ukhulume nawe.
Because 17 is speaking after the foundation he has left in the previous chapters.
Ngenxa yokuthi u17 ke uvela ezinye izahluko sezivelile ekuqaleni.
In John 11, for example,
uJohn chapter 11
we know the passage where he goes and raises Lazarus. In fact, the message comes that he's
lapho
dying.
ahamba khona esiyavusa uLazarus.
In that chapter,
Kuleso sahluko leso
the emphasis,
okugqugquzelwayo laphiyana
for example, when he speaks to Mary and Martha,
ukuthi sizonikeza umzekeliso maye khuluma lo Mary lo Martha
is that death is not the end.
ukuthi ukufa asikuphela komuntu.
So death is not the conclusion of anyone's story.
Ukufa asikuphela kodaba lomuntu.
It also, in that chapter,
Ukuthi kuleso sahluko leso
we have that very popular passage, John 11:35.
kulomuntu ke odumile kakhulu kuJesu lesakhe
We know
siqadiwe.
the verse, right?
Siyayazi ke
What does
iverse
John 11:35 say?
uthini uJohn chapter 11 verse 35.
Jesus wept.
uJesu wakhala.
It is said to be the shortest verse in the English
Kuthiwa
language.
yilo ke iverse elifitshane kuwo wonke amaverses ngolimi lwesilungu.
But what the story is behind that verse is one of the most potent lessons of that chapter.
Kodwa ke esikutholayo ukuthi le sisahluko isisahluko esibaleke kakhulu.
Because the pain that Christ is expressing in his weeping
Ubuhlungu uKristu abuzwayo uma ekhala
is not so much because of the loss of Lazarus,
akwenziwayo ukuthi uLazaro usefile.
but because of the contradiction that the sinners around him are showing.
Kodwa kwenziwa ukungazwisisi kwezoni okuboniswa izoni okungazwisisi kwezoni ukuthi azasingazwisisi uKristu umuntu onjani.
They are weeping here for a dead person.
Bayakhala abakhalela umuntu ofileyo.
But when the dead person is raised,
Kodwa uma umuntu ofileyo evuswa
they want to kill the one who raised him.
bafuna ukubulala umuntu omvusileyo.
The pretentious nature of humanity is what Christ is crying about.
Imvelo yomuntu yilokhu uKristu ayekukhalela.
That we can pretend to want or to be for something,
Ukuthi thina siyakwazi ukuthi senze sengathi lokhu sikumele.
but behind our backs we are
Kodwa
totally
ke
against it.
siflathele kulokuningi okusengqondweni zethu.
In chapter 12,
Sahluko ngo12
he acknowledges that the hour is come.
unanzelela ukuthi ihora selifikile.
You remember that Christ, many of the passages that in the preceding chapters in the
Ama
other
izahluko
Gospels,
lezi ezandulela lesi
He always says,
uthi
"I
yena
cannot do
uKristu
that.
angikwazi ukwenza
my
lokho
hour is not yet come.
ngoba ihora lami likafika.
I can't yet do that. It's not yet
Angikwazi ukwenza
time."
lokho ngoba isikhathi sami sikafika.
But from here on forward,
Kodwa kusuka lana kusiya phambili
he says the hour has
uthi
come.
yena isikhathi sami ke sesifikile.
And he starts speaking openly about
Bese
his death.
yaqala ukukhuluma ke ekhululekile futhi evulekile ngokufa kwakhe.
In chapter 13,
Sahluko ngo13
he institutes the Lord's Supper. We already touched on that.
sesifundile ke sakhuluma ngokuthi uqala ke iLord's Supper isidlo senkosi.
And in the Lord's Supper,
Esidlweni senkosi
some of the things that stand up as key
ezinye izinto ke ezivelayo zibalulekile kakhulu.
is the issue of humility,
Indaba yokuzehlisa.
servant leadership.
Abathungameli abakwazi ukusebenza ebantwini ukusebenzela abantu.
Because before this time,
Ngenxa yokuthi kungakafiki lesi sikhathi
when people would gather to eat,
abantu behlangana besidla.
it was the servant who would come and wash those at the dinner table.
Kwakungabantu ke ababephethe ababebuye bezogezisa inyawo zabaphetheyo.
So those who sit at the table
Labo behlala ematafuleni
are too important to touch feet.
babe baluleke kakhulu ukuthi bangathinti izinyawo
They are
zabantu.
leaders.
Laba ke
They are
ngabathungameli.
people exalted.
Laba ngabantu abaphakanyiselwe
They are people in
phezulu.
high places.
Abantu abasendaweni eziphezulu.
They don't touch feet.
abathinti inyawo zabantu.
But here comes the master.
Kodwa bese kusiza ke umphathi omkhulu.
And he says, my responsibility
Ebese sithi owami umsebenzi ukuthi libonisa
is to make sure you are clean.
ukuthi ukuthi ngiqinisekise ukuthi lihlambulukile.
And not to delegate that work to somebody else.
Ngingathathi lo msebenzi nginikeze omunye umuntu.
It is first my responsibility before anyone else does it.
Wami kungakabi lo muntu owenzayo.
And so that's Christ's lesson in the Lord's Supper.
Isifundo ke uKristu asinikeza abantu lesi esidloni senkosi.
He then adds on to that.
Ebese ke ayengeza kulokho.
And he says to them,
Ebese sithi kubo
in what people say is a new commandment that Christ gives.
ngabantu ke lo umthetho omutsha noma umyalezo
Above
omutsha.
all else,
Uthi ngaphezulu kwakho konke
have love one for another.
thandanani.
This is how people know you're disciples.
Yikho lokho okuzenza abantu babone ukuthi ngabalandeli
Not a
bami.
baptismal certificate.
Hayi ukuthi mhlawumbe
Not because you gather on the same day at the same time.
hayi ukuthi mhlawumbe nihlangana
Not because you wear a certain uniform
hayi
together.
ukuthi mhlawumbe ne-uniform ethile.
That's not how people know that you're
Ayisiyo
disciples.
indlela abantu kumele bakwazi ngayo ukuthi umlandeli kaKristu.
They know because of your love for one another.
Bakwazi ngothando onalo kwabanye abantu.
That's the lesson in chapter 13.
Lo lesi sifundo kusahluko
So when he then prays for unity in
lapho
chapter
ethandazela
17,
ke ubambana kusahluko 17.
it is based on that these people will love one
Lokhu
another.
ke kwakhelwe ekuthini abantu bathandane.
In chapter 14,
Sahluko 14.
he gives them what the end goal is. He gives them what the end goal is.
Ebasibanikeza ke okuyikho kubalulekileyo ukucinela kwakho konke.
You remember chapter 14 starts by saying, I'm going home,
Sahluko 14 ebese sithina ke ngiyahamba ngekhaya.
but I'm going to prepare places for you to
Kodwa
come and stay.
ngiyalungisa indawo yokubona mali ifika likwazi ukuhlala.
And in that place,
Kuleyo ndawo
he is highlighting the importance of having the main thing, the main thing.
uveza ukubaluleka kokuthi sibe nokubalulekileyo ukucinela.
Remember, Romans chapter 8 says,
AbeRoma chapter 8 bathi bona
the sufferings of this time
ukuhlupheka kwalesi sikhathi
cannot be compared
angeke kuze
with the
kulinganiswe
glory that shall be revealed in us.
nenkazimulo ezovezela thina.
So it's always very much important
Kubaluleke kakhulu
that as you go through painful moments,
ukuthi lapho udlula esikhathini sobuhlungu,
difficult moments,
isikhathi ezinzima,
heavy moments,
isikhathi
you
ezisizayo,
keep the end in mind.
wena ubusufaka uphetha engqondweni, ukucina engqondweni.
We heard that we're going to be visiting a family for
Sizwile
Christmas.
ukuthi sizobe sivakatshela ke umndeni obulahlekelwe lilunga lawo.
That means these are things that happen in this life.
Yizinto ezenzakalayo kule mpilo esiphila kuyo.
And sometimes those things can remove our eyes from Christ.
Lezi zinto sesingasikhipha amehlo ethu ziwasuse kuKristu.
And so in chapter 14,
Kusahluko 14.
Christ says, don't forget why
uKristu
you're
uthi
here.
yena lingakhohlwa ukuthi kungani la.
Another place he says,
Kwenye indawo besithi yena
don't be fools.
lingabi iziphukuphuku.
That you begin building
Ukuthi niqale ukwakha.
without considering what the cost of this building project will be.
Ningazange nabheka ke indleko yalezo zakhiwo.
Lest in the middle,
Funa ngaphakathi naphakathi.
you fail to complete because maybe resources run dry.
Bese niyahluleka ukuqeda ngoba ke insiza seziphelile.
And people look at you and say,
Abantu bese bayalikhangela bathi ha,
behold a man.
khangelani ke amadoda.
He started but failed.
Indoda eqale ukwakha kodwa yehluleka.
And so he's speaking about Christianity, by the way.
Ubekhuluma ngesiKristu sethu.
Because in the Christian world,
Ngenxa yokuthi ke ehambeni lethu
if you're
lesiKristu
not careful,
lapho ungananzelelanga
your resources will run dry.
insiza zakho zizokuphelela.
And people will say,
Abantu bazobuza ukuthi kanti lo akusinguye yini lo wami.
who would make noise on us with their drums on Sabbath?
Umsindo ngamadrama akhe ngeSabatha.
When the pathfinders are marching, they're calling us,
Abaphanda
making
lapho
noise.
ayemacha.
When they want to have big Sabbaths, they want to call us and start singing and whatnot.
Big Sabbath besipiza.
Is this not the
Kanti
one?
lo akusinguye yini.
When times have gotten tough for you
Lapho izikhathi sezibenzima.
and you have withdrawn, you've retreated back.
Lapho wasubuyela ke emuva.
Christ then says in chapter 14,
Kusahluko 14 uKristu uthi yena
count the cost.
woza uzokukhangela ke indleko.
But beyond that,
Kodwa ke ngaphezulu kwalokho
look beyond to the end prize
akuzabe ukuthi ubheke ke umklomelo osekucineni.
and see if it is not worth it.
Ubusuyabheka ukuthi kungabe kungafanele na.
see if it is really worth it.
awubheka ukuthi akulingani na futhi njalo futhi akufanelanga na.
He also promises in that chapter
Ebesiyathembisa futhi kulesi sahluko
that he will always be our help.
ukuthi uzohlala futhi engumsizi wethu.
He will always be present with us.
Uzohlala enathi.
He doesn't only do that.
Akayenzi lokho kuphela.
He then says the Holy Spirit I will give to
Ebese sithi
you.
yena umoya oyingcwele ngizolithiyela yena.
He will assist you.
Uzolisiza.
And then he goes back to our topic in the morning.
Bese siphela ke kusahluko sethu besikhuluma kuso ekseni.
He says rely on prayer, rely on my word.
Ebese sithi yena kuwe ncika emthandazweni uncike futhi nezwi lami.
Rely on prayer, rely on my
Ncika
word.
emthandazweni weyame futhi ezwini lami.
Chapter 15.
Sahluko ngo-15.
He says,
Ebese
above
sithi
all
yena
else,
phezu kwakho konke
abide in me.
hlalani kimi.
Abide in me, that's where you find
Hlalani
home.
kimi yikho lapho ezothola khona
Abide in
ikhaya.
me, that's where you find
Hlalani
relief.
kimi yikho lapho ezothola khona ukuphola.
And then again he reminds the disciples,
Ebese yakhumbuza ke abafundi bakhe.
love one another.
Thandanani.
Not only that,
Hayi kulokho
in actual
kuphela.
fact, he then ups the game, he increases the gear.
Ebese kukhuphula ke izinga lezinto.
In verse 13 of the chapter, he says,
Verse 13 esahluko esifanayo bese
if you
yena
want to see love,
uma lifuna ukubona uthando.
there is no greater love than to give up your life for someone
Alukho
else.
uthando olukhulu oludlula lolu.
To give up your life for another.
Ukuthi unikele impilo yakho uyinikelela omunye.
Maybe this is a time for you to pause and reflect.
Mhlawumbe isikhathi sokuthi ume usubheka emuva.
What in when I look at my love for the
Ukuthi
people in this house,
ungabheka uthando enginalo labantu laba balapha endlini.
can I die for any one of these?
Ukhona umuntu engamfela yila ngaphandle komuntu engithandana naye.
No, we want practical lessons on it.
Ngifuna ke izifundo ezibambekayo.
Singers,
We don't want to say yeah we do love, we do love.
no, Christ says there is no greater love
uKristu uthena alukho uthando olukhulu
than to lay down your life for another.
ngaphandle kothando lokuthi usungafa ufela umunye umuntu.
Because it seems we had not understood, eh?
Ngenxa yokuthi kubonakala ngathi bekungeke kuzwisiseke lokho.
Because this is the very same words he had said.
Lawa ngamazwi afanayo akade ezowatsho.
He had said this in John 13, 34,
Uthe
35.
John chapter 13 no 14.
Chapter 13, verse
Chapter
34, 35.
13 verse 34 no 35.
This is how men shall know you are my disciples.
Leyo indlela abantu abazokwazi ngayo ukuthi ngabafundi bami.
When you have love one for another.
Nxa umuntu nxa lilothando omunye komunye.
Now it seems it's a problem.
Kungathi kuba iproblem
Because this has been a commandment from old times.
ngoba lo umthetho wesikhathi
I mean,
sakudala.
Leviticus says that you should love the Lord your God
uLeviticus uthi bothanda uNkulunkulu
and love your neighbor.
thande nomakhelwane wakho.
So what's new about this
Yini
Christ?
entsha evela kuKristu?
He then says,
Ebese
as I
sithi
have
yena
loved you.
njengalokho ngilithandile lina.
How have you loved us, Christ?
Kristu sithande kanjani kanti thina?
I went to the cross for you.
Ngihambe ngayele ngesiphambanweni ngilengena lina.
So when he speaks in 15:13,
Nxa siya ku15 no 13
he is saying there is no greater love
uthi yena alukho uthando olukhulu
than to lay down one.
olungadlula uthando lokuthi ufele omunye wakho.
And he's saying that's the kind of love that we should have.
Uthi yena yilo uthando okumele sibe nalo.
Chapter 16.
Sahluko ngo16
He then says, but this we don't achieve by ourselves.
uthi kodwa lokhu konke asikufezi ngamandla wethu.
We only do it by the power of the Holy
Sikwenza
Spirit.
ngamandla kaMoya oyingcwele.
We cannot do without the Holy
Asikwazi
Spirit.
kukwenza ngaphandle kaMoya oyingcwele.
We cannot do it without relying on prayer.
Asikwazi kukwenza singeyamanga emthandazweni.
You see, Christ doesn't call us to a difficult work.
uKristu akasibizele emsebenzini onzima.
Difficult work is not what Christ is calling us to.
Umsebenzi onzima siwona uKristu asibizela wona.
He calls us to an impossible work.
Usibizela emsebenzini owenzekayo ongenzeka.
An impossible work.
Umsebenzi oyenzekayo.
Ongenzeki.
Impossible no. Ongenzeki.
Christ calls us not to a difficult work.
uKristu akasibizele emsebenzini onzima.
He calls us to an impossible work.
Usibizele emsebenzini ongenzekiyo.
No one can do this work.
Akekho umuntu ongawuyenza lo msebenzi lo.
No one can do this work.
Akekho umuntu ongawenza umsebenzi wokufela omunye umuntu.
But Luke says,
uLuke ethi yena
what is impossible with men
okunzima emntwini noma ongenzakaliye emntwini
is possible with God.
kuyenzeka kuNkulunkulu.
You cannot achieve this work without God.
Awukwazi ukwenza ukuthanda umunye umuntu ngalendlela ngaphandle kaNkulunkulu.
And so when you then read verse 12 of chapter 17,
Abesefunda verse 12 ka chapter 17.
Now remember, we are speaking here.
Khumbulani ukuthi siyakhuluma la.
We are trying to encourage ourselves as elders and clerks.
Sizama ukuthi sizinikeze amandla futhi sizigqugquzele njengama elders nama clerks.
And encourage the church that they are in good hands.
Siyagqugquzela ibandla futhi usilitshele sinikeze isithembiso ukuthi besezandleni eziphephileyo.
Verse 12.
Uverse ngo12
says
uthi yena
it's a success report.
Lo ke lokungumbiko ke onempumelelo.
It's a performance review.
Lokhu ke kubheka ukuthi senze kanjani.
They call them KPIs, key performance indicators.
Bonisa ke ukuthi sisebenze kanjani.
Christ is saying, let's look at how many you gave me.
uKristu bese akasikhangela ukuthi kanti linikeza abantu abangaki.
Now as we look today, I finished my work. I'm done with my mission.
Ubasibheka namhlanje ngiyenzile umsebenzi wami ngiqedile uthumo lwami.
How many do I still have?
Bangaki engisasenayo?
How many do I still have?
Bangaki engisasenayo?
And then he can proud. It's almost like I can see him. It's just that Christ was not a proud man.
Ngiyabona manje uKristu kwangathi akusindoda eyizitshaya isifuba.
But I can almost see like I have lost no one.
Kodwa ngiyabona le izitshaya isifuba ithi angilahlanga umuntu.
I have lost no one.
Angilahlanga umuntu.
Can we say that?
Singakwazi ukuthi sikutsho lokho na.
Can we say that of those that we baptized in the last baptism,
Singakwazi ukuthi sikutsho ukuthi laba esibabhaphathize kumbhaphathizo wokugcina.
We have lost no one.
Akekho olahlekileyo.
When you can say that in the previous quarters
membership report,
we have lost no one.
Akekho na olahlekileyo.
When we have this quarter's membership report being read,
Uma ke sizoba ne-membership report kule quarter iphela,
we can say there are no members missing.
Ngeke sikutsho yini ukuthi akekho umzalwane olahlekileyo.
Which we can read and say, hey, Lona, we're not sure.
Esingeke sitsho ukuthi lo asinasiqiniseko ngaye kodwa sike sezwa manje.
Last begase.
It seems like last time he was at
because that means we have lost no one. Eh? That's what we're saying.
Lokho ke ukuchaza ukuthi akekho na umuntu esimlahlileyo noma olahlekileyo.
You know, one of the responsibilities of a clerk
Okunye ke umsebenzi kaClerk
is that when you see a member not in church for 2-3 weeks,
ukuthi uma ubona umzalwane engeke ebandleni okwamaviki amabili amathathu,
you call and find out if everything is okay.
Ubusiyafona ubuza ukuthi kungabe konke kusahamba ngolayini na.
I'm not going to ask you how when we did that as a
Angifuna ukuthi ngibuze lokho ukuzamela ukuthi